bad.
You were all involved in a critical incident that was life-threatening. You had a bullet go through your fucking head over the top. You felt the heat. I remember that.
Yeah.
Because I saw you after that shooting.
This is gonna hurt. It's time for the Suffering Podcast. But
You're still the same miserable person.
I am. I have a lot more tools. So this is what I tell people. I still go through the same troubles I did back then.
Right.
But I have more tools in order to rely on to get me through. It's a familiar situation now. Where after my shooting, everything was chaos. Everything was very unfamiliar. Now I know, okay, I've been here before. I can deal with this. But I do have my moments.
It's not chaos anymore. It's just chaotic.
Yeah. So when group therapy, obviously the lockdown happened and we could no longer have group, and there wasn't even a possibility, even if for a tune-up. And I don't do well with the Zoom therapy. I know that's the way of the world now, but I don't do well with that. I need to be in the same room with somebody. And I've done so many crazy things in the 10 years that I've been out of the police department. Because I got to keep my mind occupied, so I start this show. And when I'm trying to figure out the concept of this show, it was just, and I did the first episode, and I'm like, oh, okay, I understand. This is us just sitting there going and talking it out. And when it really hit home is episode 9 when he came in, and I remember sending you that episode, going, yeah, you might want to listen to this because it was pretty interesting. What did you think about that?
I thought it was good.
Well, when my crazy ideas,
Yeah.
You know what? Like this guy's out of.
Some of them are a little far-fetched.
my shows?
Well, no, I'm being polite.
So some
I'm
of the
not polite a lot.
Some of the stories we tell are some of the stories in here.
Yeah. Well, I listened to a few of them.
Well, I want your honest opinion because, believe it or not, your opinion really matters to me. Don't mention anything specific, but
no. Yeah, most of them are good.
Yeah,
really,
most of them. So, audience out there, listen to most of our shows. But that is the genesis of this show,
right?
What the feeling that we were able to bring each other in group therapy because of what you facilitated in that room in Verona, New Jersey, is how this has grown to what it is today. And listen, we're still growing every single day, but it went from my basement to Pompton Plains to here we are, and we've got a chance to talk to some amazing professionals.
I'm quite proud that you guys did this, and that because that was all part of the group.
Kevin always says it is. This is an extension of group therapy.
So I think that it served a really positive purpose, and it supported law enforcement, and it also showed what goes through a cop's mind when they end up in this serious critical incident.
Boy, I'd like to be a fly on your wall when you're talking to somebody, because I know I've heard things back end from people who have gone to see you. Oh yeah, Doc was talking about you. I want to be because it's probably a conversation like this. These fucking guys, you're never going to believe what the fuck they did. Something like that.
Close enough.
I could picture somebody walking in, like being in a critical incident or something. Guys, like, Doc, I'm all fucked up. Don't think you're that fucked up. You got to meet this Kevin Donaldson. He was fucked up.
Were we?
I don't use names.
Yeah. Well, you can use my name. I use yours enough.
That's all right.
We have to be some of the most fucked up individuals you've had in your office.
No.
That's bad.
You were all involved in a critical incident that was life-threatening. You had a bullet go through your fucking head over the top. You felt the heat. I remember that.
Yeah.
Because I saw you after that shooting. Think about all these things. You shot somebody else. Everybody had a critical incident there, which is that's for your life. That's life. It's life lasting. It's not going away. You're not going to think about it every day, but once in a while you might have a trigger. It's like, oh my God.
You know what
happens.
You know what me and Kevin talk about all the time? You know what one of the big triggers is? The anniversary every year.
Yeah, definitely.
Like the week leading up and even into the week after it. Mm-hmm. It's why I go up. My shooting happened at 2:27 in the morning. I go up to the scene that day at 2:27 every year.
Really?
every year.
Do you find it therapeutic?
I don't know. I really, the anxiety going up there is just crazy, but I feel compelled to go up there. I mean, it's totally different now, because they did construction and everything. It's totally different, but I just feel like compelled to be there.
I don't know if you remember. Maybe it depends. Usually I have, my cop go back to the scene just to go there.
Yeah.
So you're going to hear this one this is something new. I have never gone. I've driven close trying to get back to that scene. I was never able to drive past the house ever. Last year, I'm in the car with my son. I'm not doing well. All right, I'm having a bad day. But my son in the car is sort of keeping me level. I'm driving for whatever reason. I drive back to the scene. And my son knows enough. He knows I was in a shooting. He knows enough. He doesn't know the full extent of what I went through, but he knows enough. And the way it's a townhouse complex, so I pulled in the back. There's a side parking lot, and you can see the deck of where it happened. And I show him, and I take a picture, and I say, "You see the deck right there?" And he goes, "Wow, that's really small." I was like, "Yeah, it was up close and personal." And I remember just staring at it.
Where was that glass? Where was that piece of glass?
It was a sliding glass door.
Oh,
a sliding glass door that we threw a chair through. And my son, I looked at my son because I wanted to see his reaction on it. And I think that day he looked at me and he didn't say a whole lot. But I think it affected him a little bit, saying that's where
definitely
that's where all this stuff happened. But that's the first time I had ever been back, and that was a year ago. Mm-hmm. So it took me 9 years to get back to that spot. So I got to give you a lot of credit for being able to go back. I was not comfortable. I wanted to get out. I don't even know if the woman still lives there, who lived there before.
Do you have any of your uniforms?
I have 2.
You saved them?
I have 2 of my uniforms. Unfortunately, the dickheads of my department threw
patches. They take your patches?
Well, yeah. They tried to say they tried to tell me this is how bad my place was. They did not like me.
That.
I wanted what was in my locker, and there were uniforms, and they said, "Okay, well, you got to turn the patches in." I'm like, I
remember that.
I'm not going to fucking turn the patches in. I said, "Tell me one person in the history of the Roseland Police Department that has turned their patches in." Nobody. The uniform of that night, the shooting uniform, they threw it away. And that's one I think I would have wanted to have. Maybe
I don't know if you wanted that.
You want to hear this?
I didn't have a control over it. I think that's what hurt me the most.
The story of my uniform. They stripped us at the scene that night, put us in civilian clothes in a command post. They take your gun, your belt, your everything, stripped us right down. They put it in a paper bag, and off it went. Because we had the tire shrapnel all over us and everything else. So I kept calling my chief. "Chief, when's my uniform coming back? When's my uniform coming back?" And I lived right down the street from headquarters. Chief calls me up one day and says, "Mike, your uniform's back. You can come get it." I ran down the street, picked up my uniform in the same brown paper bag. I ran home. I took it out. I looked at it, put it in the bag, threw it all in the garbage.
Really?
Didn't want it anymore. I don't have a uniform. I threw everything. I either gave it away or threw it away.
Well, yeah. I kept 2 for a reason, and I put them in a box, and they're stacked away along. So I kept 2 of everything except my leather jacket, which obviously I only have 1 of. So when I pass, I want my children to each have 1. I got 2 kids. They can split, and that's what I used to do. But there's a piece of me, and I know there's a piece of you that will always be that police officer who really loved that job.
Yeah.
And that's what I miss. I miss that purpose of that job. But we have this, and this is kind of
gives us purpose,
filling that void.
Yeah. You were a cop because you liked being a cop. You loved what you did.
Yeah.
And that's critical. And that's been the answer from most officers that I asked that question. I said, "Why are you a cop?" I said, I love being a cop. I like helping people.
Yeah. Except I didn't like shooting deer, unlike you. That's where you and I differed. But I did like to meet.
It took me about 4 years to put a Lyndhurst police shirt on.
Wow.
I had the SWAT hooded sweatshirts and everything. They were all in my closet. It took me about 4 years to put one of those on and be seen out in public.
Yeah, it
was at a Special Olympics event that I wore it.
It just seems so far away. It really does. It seems like a whole other lifetime ago.
Isn't it better that way?
I think it is. I think it is.
I think so.
So, Doc, look, we're coming to the end of this thing.
Okay.
And I always try to end every show the same way. You've watched suffering that most people can't even fathom. But it's had to have taught you something. What do you think the suffering of being a cop doc has taught you?
I think I've become more involved in people. I think I've become closer to people. You know, we're not, and I've shared things about my own life. In my business, you're not supposed to do that. I'm not dealing with regular people. I'm dealing with cops. They're a different breed. They are. They know. They'll ask me a question. They'll ask me questions about anything. I don't have problems with, unless they're really in depth and I shouldn't talk about them. But yeah, I don't mind sharing that. I think then that makes you and I closer.
I was going to say that's an admirable thing because we're bearing our souls to you.
Yeah.
You're not necessarily bearing your souls, but you're letting us into your soul a little bit.
Absolutely.
Like I said, before you got here, me and Kevin knew that you born and raised in the streets of Newark. We knew the type of people you hung out with. We knew you were at Woodstock. The other doctors we went to, I couldn't even tell you what kind of car they drove.
Nor was I interested to find
exactly.
out. There was no connection at all.
Yeah, so it makes it much more personal. I think it needs to be personal because it is personal. It's very intrusive, the things that are talked about. You know what I compare it to? I compare it to a woman finding a gynecologist. She's not just going to go to anybody. She needs to be comfortable with that person. 50% of your success in getting treated is important because 50% of the connection that you make is going to contribute to your getting better.
Well, if you have any female patients that are looking for a gynecologist, I am an amateur gynecologist. No, I'm only joking around. But
Doctor, the one thing you said before that was so true, though, when you started working with cops, you don't have to wear a suit and tie and you can say fuck again.
Right.
That's what makes it so important because it's got to be a comfort level. When you go to these other doctors, and I'm sure they're in a suit and tie, it's all stuffy. And
They didn't grow up on the street corner in Newark.
Yeah, you're just sitting there like,
Different.
you're rigid. When people come to you, it's just a very relaxed atmosphere because you're like one of us. You're dressed. Me and Kevin, when we came up here to this studio, we were talking about like what we were going to wear. I said, Kev, we're everyday people. I'm not going to come in a suit and tie and,
No.
I'm going to give you a window into the difference between you, Dr. Stefanelli, and other doctors. So when you had forced me to go to rehab, which I was resistant on, thank you for that. That was awesome when I had to spread my ass cheeks in there and make sure I wasn't smuggling anything in there. It was really wonderful. The guy was very gentle.
had long fingers, though.
Yeah, very thick hands. I was in rehab for a very short time because it sobered me up very, very quickly. I got out and I was supposed to go see my workers' comp doctor. I wasn't allowed to have a cell phone in there.
Dr. C?
Yep. Mm-hmm. I wasn't allowed to have my cell phone in there, but they were allowed you to check it every day, no call. I called him when I was going down there, say, hey, I'm going to miss my appointment this week. I'm going to rehab. I'm checking myself in. When I got out, he was the first person I called to say, hey, look, I'm out. Let's schedule something up. Because I knew my obligations with workers' comp. He says to me, I can no longer see you anymore because you're obviously not listening to me. Meanwhile, you're trying to save my life. He's worried about me not taking his advice.
Right.
Yeah.
That was him.
So that in a nutshell is Dr. Eugene Stefanelli, and I am grateful that I know you. You've been really a North Star in my life for the past 10 years. You're somebody I can joke with. You're somebody I can really bare my soul to. I've cried in front of you. I've laughed in front of you. I've had a range of emotions, and I don't think you realize how important you are to not only me but to many, 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 many officers.
That makes me feel very good. I enjoy. That makes me know that I did my job.
But I do like your wife better than you because she's Irish.
Yeah. Well, what are you gonna do? My mother-in-law comes from Ireland.
Doc, I've said it to you plenty of times. I was never suicidal during this thing. I'm too much of a pussy to kill myself. But a lot of nights I went to bed and I said, if I don't wake up tomorrow morning, it probably wouldn't be such a bad thing. You're the one that got me through this, and I can't thank you enough. Like Kevin said, you're a mentor. You're more importantly, you're a friend.
Yeah, I consider you fellas my friends. That whole group. Every once in a while, that some of those guys were from Newark.
Oh yeah.
Billy.
They call me and they say, "Come on, let's come down to Newark. Let's go to dinner, and bring your gun." But you know that I can't carry over 72. You can't carry.
Really?
Yeah.
Leave it in the car.
I'm not gonna say anything.
Thank you so much for coming in, Doc.
It was my pleasure.
You're awesome.
I enjoyed it. I do.
You're awesome.
This is like having group again. So it's all good. Did you bring your checkbook?
Yeah. We'll bill it right to insurance. That's going to do it for this episode of the Suffering Podcast, The Suffering of Cop Doc with Dr. Eugene Stefanelli, Part 2. And let's think about all the stuff that we learned. The right doctor is vital for police. Like-minded people understand each other. Be understanding because there's always three sides. But most importantly, Dr. Stefanelli saved our lives. And the Suffering Podcast is all because of him. That's going to do it for this episode of the Suffering Podcast. Don't forget to go to popple.com for a digital business card. Put in the code TSP20 for a 20% discount. Follow us on all social media. That's Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, OnlyFans. And follow Mike at Mike_Failace. Follow me at Real Kevin Donaldson. And, of course, follow the Suffering Podcast. We'll see you next week.